Welcome, everyone, to the third meeting of the 25 Interim Joint Committee on Education. All our members, please silence your cell phones, please. Jay, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll, Senator Givens, Senator Higdon, Senator Meredith, present. Senator Neal, Senator Rawlings,
Present.
Senator Reed,
Here.
Senator Thomas, here. Senator Titchener, Senator Williams,
Here.
Senator Wilson,
Here.
Senator Wise, Representative Baker, here. Representative Banta,
Present.
Representative Bojanowski,
Here.
Representative Bratcher, Representative Brown, Representative Emily Calloway,
Present.
Representative Josh Calloway, Representative Campbell,
Here.
Representative Kleins,
Here.
Representative Decker,
Present.
Representative Doan,
Present.
Representative Fleming, Representative Grossberg, Representative Grossel,
Here.
Representative Hale, Representative Jackson,
Present.
Representative Massaroni, Representative McCool,
Here.
Representative Payne, Representative Proctor, Representative Rayburn, Representative Riley, Representative Rorks, Representative Stalker,
Present.
Representative Thompson, Representative Truitt, Representative Wilner,
Here.
Co-Chair West, Chair Lewis,
Present.
and then Co-Chair Tipton.
Here.
Do I have any members that have introductions or other comments?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Decker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to welcome one of my constituents here today, Sarah Reed. Sarah is a member of the Shelby County Public School Board, and she has another full-time job, and that is being the boss of Senator Reed. Thank you. Welcome.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to make an announcement to the members. This afternoon, the CPE is hosting an open house and celebration for Gear Up Kentucky from 2 till 4:30 this afternoon. And their office, if you're not familiar, is at 100 Airport Road, and that's just up US 60 on top of the hill on the second floor. So that's from 2 to 4:30 this afternoon.
That invitation's also in your folders. Representative Banta.
I'd like to I would like to welcome Michael Frazier, who is the head of student rights.
Also, I'd like to introduce Michael Wilson with KEA, and I think he has someone to introduce. Can you all stand up so everybody can put a face with you? Thank you. Welcome. Anyone else? All right, I think we're ready to approval of the minutes. Need a motion? All in favor? Minutes approved. Before we get started, we really have a packed agenda, and there's some things on there we had to put on because they were on the timeline. So I just want to remind the presenters, if you all could do an overview and leave us time for questions. All the members have access to the information. So we are stopping at 1 o'clock. Okay, so we have members that have other meetings and so forth. So let's be aware of the time, and I'll try my best to keep us on track. Members, if we don't get to all the questions, you can leave them with us and we'll get them for you. You can contact them individually. Our first presenter is Mickey Ray Marinelli from KDE on Kentucky Academic Standards for Reading and Writing. Please make sure your green light's on. Introduce yourself for the record, and you may proceed.
Good morning. It's lovely to be with members of the committee today. Thank you to Chair Lewis, Co-Chair West, and Co-Chair Tipton, and all who are here today to allow us the opportunity to bring forward our revised Kentucky academic standards for reading and writing. I'm joined at the table by Sarah Medley, who is the Policy Advisor for the Office of Teaching and Learning, and Crystal Rowland, who is the Director of the Division of Academic Program Standards. And Crystal will actually be carrying forward the majority of the information with you today, but I'm going to kick it off just by grounding us in the statute and regulation. So you can see here that 158.6453, it requires the KDE to implement a process for reviewing Kentucky's academic standards every 6 years. The previous Kentucky academic standards for reading and writing became effective in 2019, and so now we are here carrying forward a revised draft for your consideration, and we'll be taking that forward to the Kentucky Board of Education in October as well. 704 KAR 8020 is the guiding regulation that adopts the revised Kentucky academic standards for reading and writing into law. And what you have in your digital binder, the full draft CAS document as we call it, it will be a document incorporated by reference. It will be a new one associated with that regulation. On the next slide, you can see that 6453 requires that the revision of academic standards focus on those 6 key points on the slide, and I'll give you just a moment to review those. But because that is such a critical part of the law, the advisory panels and review committee are grounded in these requirements throughout the process of standards review. So this is something that they take very seriously, and we do feel that the process is working to get us standards that are both focused on critical knowledge, skills, and capacities, but also have the supports embedded for teachers to be able to understand how to implement those effectively as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Crystal now to speak to the specifics of the process, and at the end we'll be happy to take questions that you may have regarding the CAS for reading and writing.
Thank you, Mickey. As Mickey shared, the law required the KDE to implement a process for the review and revision of standards beginning in 2017 and repeating every 6 years. And the process for that review and revision is outlined here on the screen. Today, we're in the second row, last box, presenting those recommended changes and feedback to you. The activities for the review and revision of reading, writing standards aligned with that process are included here. It began in October of 2024 with an application for teachers to serve on the Standards and Assessment Review Committees and a 30-day public comment survey on the current standards. In January, the committees met to review the public comment and recommend changes to the standards. February through early March, those changes and the assessment blueprint were released for a 30-day public comment. And in March of this year, the committees reconvened to review the public comment and make any final recommended changes, and that are reflected in the draft that we're sharing with you today. The writer's vision statement is on page 6 of the draft standards document. The standards writers envisioned standards that supported evidence-based practices and grade level learning. The vision recognizes that reading and responding to complex text are integral components of every K-12 classroom and provide access to rigorous grade level content. Reading comprehension is both a process and a product for developing both oral language and reading abilities, and vertical alignment of standards reflect cohesive, evidence-based practices that emphasize reflective and expressive language. The initial public comment yielded 308 responses from a variety of stakeholders. Respondents were asked to select Keep As Is or Revise for each standard. If the respondent selected to revise, they were prompted to give their reasoning, suggestion, and/or comment. Overwhelmingly, respondents selected Keep As Is for the standards. A total of 12% of standards were revised based on that public comment. Some revisions of note are included here, but a more detailed description of changes is located in the Standards at a Glance document that you should have access to. Suggestions and comments from the survey included themes indicating a better attunement to the science of reading and current research. Foundational skill revisions point to decodable text and encoding and decoding. That includes spelling and reading. And Standard 10 for K-12 for reading literature and reading informational text emphasizes the importance of both knowledge and strategies for comprehension. They updated the vision statement. The document was enhanced to have improved usability. Particularly the interdisciplinary literacy practices graphic was updated. On the current cast, those standards are on every page and repeated. The standards writers removed that redundancy and shifted that ILP graphic to the grade band overviews, and that was able to decrease the size of the document by about 24%. The recommended changes were released for a 30-day public comment period, and we had over 400 responses at that time. No new standards were flagged for review. The assessment blueprint was also released for a 30-day public comment period during that time. The committee reconvened to review the public comment and make final recommended changes to the standards and the assessment blueprint. Each standard appears as the example seen here with the strand, grade level, and standard number across the top. The guiding principle reflects the broader goal by graduation. The progression places the main standard in the middle, the matching standard for the preceding grade to the left, and the grade after to the right. And the dimensionality of the standard is included to support teacher clarity. And we'd be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Appreciate your all's presentation. We certainly understand the importance of reviewing and making needed modifications to our standards. Now, I know we're talking about reading and writing today. My question is probably going to be more general about standards in typical. I'm going to talk about alignment of standards to curriculum, KSA assessments, NAEP assessments. Could you comment on how we are with the alignment of those to those areas?
Happy to get started, and then Krista, I'd love for you to chime in as well. I think the first and most important step, Representative Tipton, is ensuring that the high quality instructional resource that would be adopted by a local superintendent for that district is in fact aligned to our Kentucky academic standards. We do have currently posted approved lists for K through 12 reading and writing and for mathematics, and we can know that those have at least 80% alignment. There are many that are more intricately connected to our standards, but as a baseline, those are at least 80% aligned to our standards. And the importance of that is that it ensures no matter what classroom that student is placed in, they do in fact have access to grade level learning that is aligned to the Kentucky academic standard. So that's a really important part of that. We also know that our Kentucky summative assessment must be aligned to the Kentucky academic standards, and there are groups of folks that come in to ensure that that alignment is present, and that we can have confidence in that what students are taking is in fact aligned to, in this case, the Kentucky academic standards for reading and writing, but that would be true for mathematics and the other content areas as well. When you start thinking about NAEP, that looks at things at a little bit higher grain size and level. But what I like to do is to really think about where they're identifying students who are at benchmark, and our universal screeners and diagnostics also give us that information. And so it provides a fuller picture and more clarity for teachers, for leaders around how they can identify the skills that students would need to make accelerated progress toward proficiency. But we are aiming at coherence beyond all else for each and every individual student across the Commonwealth.
Representative Truitt.
All right. I've got a statement, and then I guess I've got a question also.
Yes, sir.
First off, I get to dig into our Kentucky standards daily, and I have to brag on KDE because that's one thing that you guys do wonderful. Our standards are exactly, they're clear, they're precise. But I go back to, I think we're missing a piece, and it goes back to legislation I kind of filed last year, and I know me and Mickey have talked a little bit about this. But when I first started teaching 25 plus years ago, we had a document that was called like a crosswalk that would basically, with every textbook or every resource that you used, there was a document there tied to that would show where in our standards, that standard was addressed. Currently, right now in Kentucky, we have many approved textbooks that can be used. Every district uses something different. And like you mentioned, the hope is that 80% of those are tied to our standards. So what happens is, when you're teaching and you're using the resources that you have, some of these resources that we have don't actually address the standards that we've adopted here in Kentucky. So I really think that we need to work on a document, and I'd love your opinion on, do you think that's something that we could come up with at KDE, or something that would not only have the standard there, which is what you should teach by, but would also have, if you've got this resource, if you've got this textbook here, where in this textbook is this standard going to be addressed? Do you think that's something that maybe we could get to one day, or is that something there's already out there on the market? Just a question.
So I think those are wonderful questions for the publishers when superintendents and those curriculum teams are working together to make the best selection for the local district. So they are more than equipped already to be able to provide standards crosswalks. What excites me, though, Representative Truitt, when we think about the passage of Senate Bill 207, which updated a lot of our antiquated textbook statutes, we are looking for a partner for a repository, and that will be one of the elements that partner will push on for us with publishers. I think that should just be standard protocol, that they have to provide a crosswalk for that instructional resource for the benefit of the teachers implementing it, for principals, and for district leaders, so that they know where that exact alignment is to the Kentucky academic standards. And then those educators will be equipped to supplement more effectively because they'll know where the larger progression aligns to their adopted resource. Absolutely.
Representative Bojanowski.
Yes, so my question is about the blueprint. So, third grade foundational standards are not assessed on our KSA. So I think that for most people, they look at those scores and they say, can a child read or not read? We aren't measuring whether a child can read or not read because we're not doing the foundational standards. Can you explain why we do not have, I read through the questions, and some of them were the answers, and some of them were rather interesting in the stakeholder feedback, but nobody said, why aren't we measuring foundational standards? Could you just comment on that, please?
One of the things, and I don't want to speak for our Office of Assessment and Accountability, and I think they do have representatives in the room, but one of the things that, I think will be important by the end of that third grade year, we're hoping that not only are they decoding text, but they are comprehending rich, complex grade level text. So the KSA is crafted so that they can measure what students are meant to do by the end of that grade level. We do have mechanisms in place with the screening, with the diagnostics to get a better understanding of if that student is actually decoding text. And Representative Bojanowski, you know better than I that process should start in kindergarten so that we're identifying what support students need early on so that they can get those supports to hopefully be reading at the proficient level at third grade. So I think they're functioning in different ways. And if you think about a balanced assessment system, both parts would be imperative. But I do want to make sure that Dr. Stafford doesn't have any other comment. Okay. Thank you.
Representative Grosso.
Thank you. You just mentioned, making sure we start in kindergarten, and we have seen time and time again people discussing the importance of early childhood education. And I dream of the day when you will be talking about P12 and not K12. And so as we think about not only childcare, but Head Start and preschool, and really getting a hold of our youngest learners academically and preparing them for kindergarten, but also for reading on grade level by third grade. I mean, what are you all doing to move the needle to start kids even earlier on academics, and how can we help with the processes that you are already undertaking?
I think one of the things that I can say in terms of the Office of Teaching and Learning, we are able to work very closely with our Office of Special Education and Early Learning. And So we are promoting, and this isn't the only thing, Representative, but we are promoting the Letters Professional Learning, which is a part of the Kentucky Reading Academies. And our Office of Special Education and Early Learning also promoted a Letters for preschool teachers. And so there's this beautiful alignment that happens in that foundational learning that educators can receive through letters specifically. But beyond that, we are often in conversations around how we can provide additional professional learning supports so that we are seeing coherence between P12 and really P20 is what we would hope. And so I think that the work that we're doing to invest in professional learning will start to show an impact across all of those areas.
Thank you all very much. Enjoyed the presentation. You always do a thorough job. I think you all can just stay seated. We'll move on to our Math Improvement Committee report.
All right. Well, thank you, Chair Lewis. So this one, we are certainly transitioning just a bit. The Committee for Mathematics Achievement was charged with developing a strategic plan. And I think this is exciting because you all have supported the Kentucky Numeracy Counts legislation, which is encapsulating K-8. But the strategic plan goes beyond K-12, and it really is about those P20 supports and even into adult education. So if you look at the statute that's listed there, this is just the language that charged CMA, as we call them, with this work. It says it's established for the purpose of developing a multifaceted strategic plan to improve student achievement in mathematics at all levels of schooling, pre-kindergarten through post-secondary and adult. And so I'm going to turn it over again to Crystal Rowland. She served as the commissioner's designee on this committee and really supported them in building out a quality strategic plan. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mickey. During the 23-24 academic year, the committee met to review the statutory purpose and responsibilities of the committee. They reviewed the 2006 strategic plan, which was the one active at the time, and discussed the current landscape of mathematics instruction in Kentucky. They considered priority areas for an updated plan and formed a subcommittee charged with drafting the plan. During the 24-25 academic year, the subcommittee reviewed the feedback from the CMA discussions and reviewed other state frameworks to identify key priorities to be addressed in the plan. The CMA gave feedback on the priorities and the draft plan, and in January of this year, the CMA voted unanimously to approve the plan that we're sharing with you today. On page 4 of the plan, there is a committee's vision for mathematics achievement in Kentucky. Their vision is a Kentucky where all students can competently and flexibly use mathematical ideas to see the mathematics around them and to think critically and solve problems throughout their lives. The vision recognizes that efforts to address improved mathematics achievement should be collaborative and systemic and require support and engagement from a variety of shareholders to ensure success. Page 4 also includes those shareholders and how they might support mathematics achievement through their role. The committee envisioned a plan that was usable for all shareholders and understandable by all. The key priorities were identified to provide system-wide support for mathematics achievement pre-kindergarten through grade 20 and in adult education. The first priority, student empowerment, recognizes that students should be the highest priority for a plan around improving mathematics achievement. It recognizes that to be successful in mathematics, students must be empowered learners, able to engage in problem solving, ask questions when things don't make sense, and advocate when they need additional support. For mathematics specifically, it's a long-held belief that mathematical proficiency is an innate ability that you're either born with or you're not. This is simply not true and works against our efforts. Encouraging a growth mindset that hard work and perseverance can improve performance can support learners in reaching proficiency. Key priority 2, effective mathematics teaching and learning, includes the high-quality instructional resources, instructional approaches, evidence-based instructional practices, and classroom environment. Key priority 3, continuous educator development and growth, attends to the need for ongoing job-embedded, math-specific professional learning for math educators and administrators to advance professional practice and advance student outcomes. Key priority 4, continuum of learning, recognizes that mathematics builds on prior skills and concepts. And there are periods of transition where students are particularly vulnerable to losing skills, such as the transition from grade bands, elementary to middle school, from middle to high, and certainly from high school into post-secondary education or the adult education space. Key Priority 5, Community and Family Partnerships, speaks to the importance of partnering with families and community organizations strategically as critical agents in supporting student achievement. And Key Priority 6, Teacher Recruitment and Retention, recognizes that there is a shortage of teachers across the board, but highly trained mathematics teachers are even more difficult to find. And so this priority recognizes the need to recruit, hire, retain, and support effective mathematics teachers. Each key priority is supported by clarification and an evidence basis. It includes specific goals and recommended actions for each. This is further supported by considerations and resources. The committee desired a plan that would speak to a variety of shareholders and would leverage the resources and assets of Kentucky for the good of Kentucky students. The committee sees this as a living document, one that is revised as refinements are needed. It is the CMA's belief that the strategic plan for mathematics achievement will provide a unified vision to support collaborative engagement across shareholders to improve math proficiency for all Kentucky students. And we're happy to entertain questions.
Before we do that, I want to speak just a little bit to the Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act specifically. So you can see here that several priorities will be directly impacted by the Kentucky Numeracy Counts Act. So 158.8402 focuses on student access to evidence-based, high-quality math instruction aligned to our Kentucky academic standards for mathematics. And there was legislation that provided funding for grants for the purchase of those high quality instructional resources. So that aligns very closely with priority 2. 158.843 is the fund, and that supports the professional learning. And so if you see their priority 3 is really about making that investment in educator development and improvement. And so we have teacher and administrator academies that are connected to Kentucky Numeracy Counts thanks to that appropriation. And we're building out a math network that's meant to wrap around our grantees to support them in implementing HQIR, which is challenging work. And then lastly, the connection to community and family partnerships, 158.8402 also requires resources for parents and families. And so that's really the next phase of our work. We're wanting to ensure, just as we have in the literacy space, that there are supports in place for parents and families so that they can encourage mathematics success at home. So that is work to come. But now we are happy to take any questions that you may have.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is for you, Ms. Marinelli.
Yes, sir.
And I'm on the math section that talks about key priority 3, continuous educator development growth. Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to come down to recommended actions. Ms. Marinelli, I come from an area that is strongly supportive of public education. Okay. I get a lot of questions and come in contact with a lot of people that want to know what's going on with education and what their children are learning, because they want the best education for their children possible. Okay. I'm looking at recommended action 2, Ms. Marinelli, that I want to talk about to the people in my area. And it says districts and schools develop a professional learning plan in collaboration with math teachers. This is recommended action now, that identifies math-specific personalized professional learning needs of teachers, school, and district with cohesive and viable strategies that align to those needs. Now, my question is very simple, Ms. Marinelli. How do I explain that to a parent that doesn't have a PhD, may not have graduated from college, but again, want their children to go to school and get the best education possible so they can do the best for their teachers? So explain to me what that means in just layman terms, Ms. Marinelli.
So I'll begin, and then again, I do want to yield to Crystal to clarify as well. But Senator Thomas, I think that one of the most important things that can be clarified is that as professionals, we undergo a process of a continuous learning and improvement. And so in order for teachers in mathematics to be best supported by the district, they need to have responsive action in terms of the professional learning that are provided for those teachers. A lot of times the professional learning at the district level can sometimes be more general in nature, but if you want to truly support mathematics teachers in implementing the standards, in providing high quality instruction in mathematics, the professional learning that's chosen and that is planned out needs to align specifically to their classroom instruction. And what we would say is that it should align to their instructional resources. So curriculum-based professional learning is going to support those teachers in being able to better meet the diverse needs of students in the classrooms of the students that they serve.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mickey, y'all appreciate your presentation. I'm kind of excited today. When we were drafting House Bill 162, went through that process in 24. This is exactly what we were envisioning, future of education and mathematics instruction. So I really appreciate all the hard work of the committee members and everybody involved. I think my next question kind of aligns with Senator Thomas's comment. A few weeks ago, I had a chance to go down to JCPS to a professional development session on mathematics education. Now, Mickey, you talk a lot about letters. We talk about letters here. That's kind of the gold standard for literacy. However, there is no gold standard for numeracy. But what I was so impressed with is that you all, KCM, university professors got together, and you all have and got with the researchers and come up with evidence-based professional. Could you talk a little bit about that process and the product that's come out of that to help our teachers in numeracy education?
Absolutely. Thank you for the question. It is exciting. So because of numeracy counts and the appropriation that was given for this work, we were able to work with the Kentucky Center for Mathematics to build out a K-5 teacher course that really will ground them in evidence-based practice for mathematics and help not only those teachers, but the administrators who are supporting those teachers learn more about what high quality mathematics instruction looks like. So a lot of times, especially for principals, if that's not your background, if that's not your subject area, it's harder to know how to provide feedback and support. So we knew we needed two strands. We needed the teacher course to be able to support teachers who are doing this work right now in classrooms day in and day out. But we also needed to make an investment, and PIMSR is our partner in this work, for the administrators who are supporting those teachers as well. And I think more and more, our hope is that can be expanded. Right now, we have 1,000 teachers who have committed to doing the KCM K-5 training. And this is just the beginning for us. This was, cohort 1, the very first phase. And we have about, I believe it's 300 administrators who are also going through the course at the same time. And it's going to assist them in the conversations and the feedback, even being able to identify the needs that they have. So there are math manipulatives that are a part of that. So it will illuminate, I think, for those educators, what will be in the best service of students at kindergarten all the way through grade 5. We do have some supports in place for middle school as well, but the biggest group that's moving is our K-5 academy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine's more of a comment, I guess, than a thank you, ladies, for your presentations on both of these. And for years, as an educator, I thought reading was the key to education. But in the last little bit, I have changed my mind, and now I think it is discipline and cooperation in the classroom. School back home has been in session for about a week. We had a high school student arrested for she had a 3-ring binder at home, manifesto that she was going to kill all these people. We had a sixth grader that was arrested for attacking a teacher, handcuffed and taken out of the school. My golfing buddy on Friday afternoon, his daughter's a fourth grade teacher. A student in there was threatening other students, threatening the teacher. Finally got her taken out of that classroom and moved somewhere else. So no matter what our strategies are for reading and math and any other subject that we teach, until we figure out how to deal and help parents deal with the discipline problems, the mental issues that our students are having, I don't know what the answer is. And that's just one example. Usually, Steve and I was talking about, usually there's a honeymoon period in education. Usually you have a month or 6 weeks or so where everybody's well behaved and you have a honeymoon period. But this was the first week of school, and that's the things that we're dealing with. That's what our teachers are dealing with in the classroom. So teaching reading strategies and math strategies, they would love to be able to do that. But dealing with threats and being attacked by students, all those types of things are getting in the way of what they'd like to do. The reason they went into teaching, and they're not getting to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Truitt.
All right. One thing I've got an advantage over everybody else up here, I guess, is I get to kind of see what we're testing in Kentucky. All right. And I taught high school algebra and high school geometry for 20 years. And what I've noticed since being in elementary school is that some of the things that I used to teach in algebra is now being tested or similar. Some of those similar concepts are in 4th and 5th grade. I think we do a good job of really having rigorous standards in Kentucky. So my question to you, I guess, is how do we in Kentucky stand up to the national math standards? And, me and Representative Bojanowski talked last year when testing was going on, and how interesting it would be if we as a committee could actually one day look at a 3rd or a 4th grade math assessment. I really believe that my colleagues' eyes would be opened up to how strenuous and how rigorous these standards are. So I guess my question is are we asking kids more than what the national standards are? And I guess that's my question to you.
So I would say, Representative, that we are not asking more, that we have standards that are very much aligned to national math standards. But I do think it's interesting. There are open educational resources that are HQIR. And so even if we wouldn't have access to a KSA version of a test to share with you, we could very easily get access to some of those open education resources so that you can really see what that looks like in practice. And we'll be happy to pull together some examples for the committee if that's helpful.
I think sometimes we think that, if they're not proficient in math, that they can't add or do multiplication. But it has nothing. The questions nowadays, the tests are nothing with questions like they get calculators on half the test, but they don't help the kids because it's all about applying those standards into a word problem, and it takes that deep knowledge. And I think sometimes we as parents, sometimes we try to help our kids on math, and we'll teach them the shortcuts like we learned back in the day. And when we're doing that, we don't realize that we're messing things up because they need to understand why those concepts work and why you don't have that understanding. So thank you. I think that would be interesting for us to kind of see for my colleagues to see some released items for elementary school.
Okay. Thank you.
Representative Callaway, and this will be our last question on this session, on this issue.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a question regarding, and it was an excellent presentation. I thank you all for your thoroughness. Thank you for your time today. Priority number 5 mentions community and family partnerships. And I just wanted to dive into that briefly. The resources for local community partners to provide additional support to further student proficiency. Can you tell me what that looks like? And is that involving private sector? What does that look like?
Crystal, do you want to speak a little bit to the intent of that one?
Yes. So with community partnerships, we think about organizations within our community that are already interacting with our youth. And so those might be after school programs or tutoring programs or adult education programs that are helping folks get their GED. So it's really being strategic about an aligned focus of here are some things and some resources that might support you in using time with students and helping to support them further their math achievement.
And I think it could be exciting to consider, at minimum in the high school space, how there could be partnerships developed for internships, for work-based experience, so that students who have a background in math and STEM and an interest in that can really find local partners to be able to sort of dip their toes into that in advance of graduating high school. So I think there's untapped potential there, but we are seeing movement to build those relationships in communities all across the state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did a great job, and appreciate your information. Our next presenters, if you all will make your way down, it'd be ETS Praxis Exam. If you will come to the table, introduce yourself for the record, turn your mics on, and you may proceed.
So in that documentation is the test scores for all the exams. They did not provide that. That was given to us by EPSB. Lauren and Josh are currently handing out the summary of the auditor's report since they provided no information.
Okay, you'll be getting some information that's been handed out right now also on this. And there's some online and that was in your online materials.
Good morning, Chairman Lewis, Co-Chairman West, and Co-Chair Tipton, members of the committee. For the record from ETS, Dr. Monica Bean, and I'm Lisa Hedrick. Thank you for allowing us to be here this morning. So I just wanted to get started in thanking you again for allowing us the opportunity to come before you to share how we as a nonprofit global organization support Kentucky and your goals for highly qualified teachers in all classrooms. ETS, frequently you probably have heard about the Praxis assessments, but we are also a much larger organization called ETS. We are a global talent solutions nonprofit, as I mentioned before, establishing and enabling lifelong learners to be future ready. We have been in existence for over 40 years. We have been part of the work around the measurement science, and our mission continues to focus upon driving innovation in the measurement science in order to power human progress. And we do this, we have a research institute that is the underlying focus of much of the work that we do. And our work with our state partners also provides us opportunities for improving our work around measurement. So specifically, let's hone in quickly. I'm sure you are going to have many questions as to the Praxis program and what that actually entails. And how we actually support the teaching profession via licensure assessments. So as you know, licensure tests do provide a consistent measure of teacher candidate abilities, regardless of the route by which a teacher comes into the classroom, whether it's through preparation programs at an institution or another route, alternative route, including a district provided program. Licensure tests also assure parents, policymakers, and communities that teachers have the knowledge needed to enter the profession based upon widespread agreement by practitioners in the profession, and I'll talk about that here in just a moment in a little bit more detail. And then licensure is also a form of public protection, assuring that aspiring teachers have the knowledge and skills necessary for safe and effective beginning level practice. And that's a key term that I want to focus on here in the next part of the presentation. So how does Praxis develop an assessment and provide the validity chain of evidence that state users require and need? And we do that through our development process, which all begins by looking at standards, looking at national standards for whatever the field is that we're developing the assessment, as well as specific state standards. And that begins usually around 2 years out from when we actually have a new test to be delivered. Those regenerated assessments are developed as states and national standards change, and so that we keep up with what states are doing, specifically as you heard this morning from the presentation before our presentation around standards. It begins and includes educators all along the way. ETS is the assistance for the process, but the actual educators from classrooms across the country, including educators in Kentucky, work on the development committees, work on the advisory committees as the blueprint is being designed and developed. Educators assist specialists at Praxis in writing the test items. And then finally, whenever we move to the standard setting process, our state educators or your state educators are also included in that process in determining what a beginning teacher candidate should know and be able to do before they are given a license. So in general, that is an overview of the process. And specifically, I wanted to just call out, for example's sake, the 3 components that Kentucky uses around in the Praxis series. And that is their very first component, which is the basic skills assessments, where candidates who are entering a teacher preparation program are asked to show that they are proficient in reading, in writing, and in mathematics, so that they will be successful in completing the program, or programs know where they need assistance and guidance throughout the program. Then finally, in the middle of that are the content assessments. And so I'm a social studies teacher. I'm a licensed social studies teacher. And so before I entered student teaching, my program in West Virginia asked that I complete the social studies assessment, showing that I had the basic knowledge aligned to the standards around what I needed to be able to teach in order for social studies students to be able to learn. And so we normally it occurs prior to student teaching. Some ask for that afterwards. There's usually flexibility among states. And then finally, the third arm of the assessment or the Praxis program series are the pedagogical assessments. And those are around how do I teach? How do I meet the needs of all learners? And those are divided into 3 different categories: K-6, 5, 9, and 7, 12. And those are normally taken again after student teaching, after teachers have had the opportunity, or student teachers have had the opportunity to work in a classroom and to develop their skill before taking that assessment. And I have 3 more slides, but they'll be very quick. One of the things that we do at Praxis that is my job is to make sure that we are providing support to multiple stakeholders across Kentucky. And so one of the very first things, and all these things are accessible online. I did include a few things in the packet that you have, but we provide Praxis aligned. We develop them internally. We provide free study companions that actually have the blueprint, the knowledge statements, practice exams within the study companion. We also have an interactive practice test that is free with every registration that simulates the testing work or the test environment, which allows students to relieve some stress, and so that they're ready when they go to the testing environment, there is less stress involved. We have numerous other paid support for candidates, and we also have what we call, this is the second bullet up there, free study plans, very similar to the crosswalks that I heard discussed this morning around standards. So we provide those knowledge statements in a format for candidates to be able to look very early on in their program. This is what I'm going to be tested on. And then be able to look within their program and keep track as they're learning about their content. Am I able to, or do I know these knowledge pieces and skills so that I'll be able to pass my assessment whenever it comes to that time? And then another thing very similarly, and I won't talk about each of these in particular, but the curriculum crosswalks. Again, it is provided for educator prep programs so that they have the blueprint, they have the knowledge statements, they can then cross-reference those not only to the Praxis assessment and what it assesses, but also the Kentucky standards around whatever content area it is, to ensure if there are gaps in their preparation, how might we go about fixing those gaps? And sometimes it's a conversation outside of the School of Education. Some schools do that alone. Some schools have me come to the campus, and we have that discussion so that students are ready upon taking their assessment. And finally, I am one of the great things about Praxis is they assign a liaison or a partner to every state that uses our program. And so I am the person that comes to Kentucky very frequently. I'm on or a phone call away, there to support whomever the stakeholder might be with questions or concerns, test taker down to the test taker and issues that they might be having. I also have come to the state about, probably 7 times in the past 9 months for multiple reasons. Most recently, I presented to the CACD group in Lexington a couple weeks ago around data and how to actually align using our Praxis Data Manager, how to look at your program, look at the data, how you're improving, where you could improve, where are the gaps. And so those are just some of the things that I do on a daily, weekly, annual basis to support Kentucky. And I'm very thankful that I do have that opportunity. So thank you for the opportunity to share with you.
Thank you. I think
questions?
we have several questions.
Okay.
Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you. So I looked through the pass rate chart, and just looking at math praxis for elementary teachers, 254 teachers did not pass. So my question for follow-up, I'm sure you don't know the answer to this, is how many of those teachers are actually in a classroom? And how is there, under an option, a different option, an alternative? And do we have any data on how their administrators feel like they're doing in the classroom? And so is there a disconnect sometimes between the ability to pass the praxis and the ability to be a high quality teacher? My question for you is, so if you have any information, you could share it. My question for you is, how are the score cutoffs determined for praxis? Pass, not pass? Is it statewide? Is it just by ETS? And do you have any thoughts on districts determining their own cutoff scores?
Excellent. So yes, the cutoff scores occur in, if you go back and look at the one chart that has the development process, at the very end of the process before a form or a test becomes operational, we do what is called a multi-state standard setting panel. And all of these states that want to use the praxis assessment for that particular content area, for example, elementary education, mathematics, they would nominate specific experts from their state to participate on that panel. And Kentucky always participates in those standard settings by nominating people that represent a practitioner, let's say, that's an expert in math. We usually also ask them to, we ask for educators that have less than 5 years experience as well. We do a broad range because we also want those educators that are newly graduated to also have an impact on what is being discussed, because again, this is the beginning level of teaching knowledge and not an expert, which you become over the course of your trajectory. So that standard setting panel actually takes the test. They take it twice. And during that time, they determine each question, they on a scale of, let's just say 1 to 10, where that question falls. Easy for a beginning teacher to answer, mid, or it might be really difficult. And as they take that test by the end, we come up with a score. The panel does, not ETS. We just supervise and are the administrator of getting it together. They panel of educators decide how many questions on that particular assessment that a candidate at the beginning level that meets the beginning teacher criteria that panel defines, and I can get a technical report for you if you'd like to see that at some point. I'll do it for elementary ed. And then that panel recommends a cut score based on their taking of the assessment and then having professional conversations with one another during that standard setting process. So then that technical report is provided to the state, and then the state takes those results and follows their own internal procedures and decides how and what score that they want to adopt. There's the recommended score that always comes out of that panel. There's a -1 standard error of measure, a -2, and +1 and +2, and then they can decide based on the context of your state or the Commonwealth what would be the best or the passing score recommended for Kentucky. And so every state does that differently, and so states will have differing cut scores.
Representative Wilner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. And mine's really a follow-up to what Representative Bojanowski asked. I'm, first of all, a huge believer in high professional standards for the protection of the public and the success of our students, so thank you for the work that you do. I'm curious, though, if you have any data to show that teachers who score high on the praxis or who pass the praxis are more effective in the classroom.
Thank you, Representative, for that question. Again, for the record, Monica Bean. And I love the question that you asked, because I think that's often the misnomer about the purpose and the intent of the assessment. It is never intended to be any indicator of effectiveness or high quality. It is around the first level of that continuum of entrance into the profession. I think about, an electrician. An electrician would have to meet the certification examination in order to become an electrician. They're going to hone their craft over years of working with a master electrician. Similarly to an educator. I go back as a former middle school English teacher, and I thought I was really prepared for day one of year one. I was not. I was ready, and my criteria was met, and I was learner ready day one. I was not as effective in year one, day one, as I was in year two, day one, year three, day one, et cetera. So it's really not about having that as a it's going to say Monica Bean is going to be a successful, effective teacher. It's Monica Bean knows the content and can teach the content to students at that grade level. And then it's up to the districts and the leadership within those districts and those schools and the co-teachers and other teachers in the building to, again, keep that continuum going along the way for that professional journey. So I appreciate that question, because that's so often misunderstood, that it is basically that just do no harm, that minimum level of criteria, similarly to like an LSAT for law school entrance, and then passing the bar. Great, now you can practice. May not be a great lawyer, but you have the ability and the right to practice, and you will improve that craft over time.
Representative Kleins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So over the weekend, I reached out to some current teachers and an administrator to get their thoughts regarding praxis. So it was 6 total, which is a small sample, but we don't have much time today, and I want to share this quickly. So this is in no order. Do away with the praxis. People like me are bad test takers because of stress and anxiety. Passing the test doesn't make you a great teacher. I think that the praxis is honestly not relevant for most teachers. The information in the exam does not align directly with the work that teachers do every day. I think that some parts are important, like the science and reading, but kindergarten teachers do not use fractions in their everyday career. And having to pay hundreds of dollars to pass or fail is crazy after paying 4 years of college tuition. This is the third one. I do believe a praxis or similar test should be required to enter our profession. It helps maintain standards and the integrity of our profession. The fourth one, I was upset when I learned that my praxis expired, and I was told by the KDE that I had to retake it even though I had passed it the first time. The fifth one, I think I'm for keeping the praxis And can you also push that people should have to take a test before becoming a parent as well? LOL, laughing emoji. The sixth, from what I can tell with doing the core praxis thus far, is that the style and questions seem to be outdated. Some of the wording is very tricky as well. I do feel some kind of equivalency test should be acquired to obtain your teaching degree, but I'm not sure that praxis is the answer. So, Mr. Chair, as you've heard, we have 6 different responses and 6 different conclusions, which to me simply states that there's no consensus to the relevancy, purpose, or effectiveness of the praxis exam. I would ask that the KDE, KEA, KSA, KASS help us collect data, like I just did, from our current certified educators to better understand the effectiveness and relevancy between the praxis and a successful teacher and administrator. I actually look forward to legislation that changes this disputed practice when it comes to teachers entering the workforce. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator Williams. Good. I'm good. Representative Cameo.
Thank you. And thank you all for the information. It was really helpful. I also had a follow-up question to Representative Bojanowski's question to you all. Just out of curiosity, and you all did a really good job explaining where the cuts come from for the scoring. How does Kentucky compare to other states with the number who either successfully pass the praxis or fail?
Thank you. Thank you for that question. So I did a quick analysis last evening in regard. I didn't pick every subject area, but I did specifically pull out elementary education and the multi-subject assessments. And for math, reading, science, and social studies, Kentucky has a higher pass rate for every single year in the last 3 years, except for one, and that's on social studies 23-24, compared to the national pass rate. So for every single subtest, Kentucky preparation program completers are scoring higher than the national. I can give you an example just from this past year, from the current data for the elementary mathematics assessment. Kentucky completers scored 86% or 86% passed the assessment. The national passing rate is 80%. And it's similar down the line reading. I think that you'd probably be interested in that. So in 24-25, you had a 91% pass rate, and the national pass rate was 84%. And so if you actually look at, and I did just a quick review of math and ELA across the programmatic levels, it's similar. Some of the pass rates are a little bit lower than the 80% rate, but you're still exceed the national average in middle school ELA as well as secondary ELA. So I think that also speaks well to what how the elementary education candidates are being prepared. And I hope that answers your question. If you want more specific data, and we can compare all areas, I'm definitely happy to pull that data for you.
The data is also in your all's packet if you want to see specific data on that. It's in there. So yes, thank you. Representative Grossberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question goes to the passing rates of the various different praxis exams. Looking through this briefly, it appears that over time, generally the passing rate doesn't change much. It might change 2 or 3%. Normally, it has improved in the last 10 years. There are a few exceptions. But I'm curious why there are some that appear to be absolute egregious anomalies. For example, on the first page, the chemistry content knowledge with a sufficient sample size had 65.71% pass in 2014-2015, then 82.35% in 2015-2016, then it drops all the way back down over time to 61.54 in 22-23, then shoots back up to 76%. I don't see that kind of anomaly in others. What makes chemistry so different that once again, with a sufficient sample size, there are some years with very high rates, some years with very low rates, versus, my wife's subject, Spanish, which took a full decade to go from 38% pass to 53% pass.
So I think it would depend upon the school that they were being trained in. Some programs are stronger than others in certain categories. Just like as a teacher, certain classes were had a more solid foundation around knowledge and skills for whatever context they are coming from. So I think the variations could possibly be that could answer that question to a certain extent. I think that would require us to delve a little bit deeper into the data around who are where were the numbers, which institutions, what years, what could be happening during those particular years. So that would be something I think that there might be additional information underlying the particular numbers and the pass rates.
And to answer the second part of that around the Spanish language, world language, one of the things that is often a misnomer is that people will say, I'm a native Spanish-speaking individual, so I can teach Spanish to non-Spanish-speaking individuals. And so that would be the same as saying, I understand English really well, so I should be able to teach English, and I understand because I'm a native English speaker. And it's very different to be able to teach the content or to teach the language to individuals versus just knowing the language. And so that often is a misnomer for the world language assessments, because they think that because they are a first world or native language speaker of whatever the language is, that they should automatically be able to pass it. And it's very different. It's not that type of assessment. It's about teaching the language to others. So that often is a part of that, because more people will take that test because they'll think, oh, I can teach it, so I want to add so I can teach that language, and they're not fully prepared for that.
I have a follow-up question to that. Respectfully, that didn't answer the question
Okay.
either half. Okay, so I'll restate the question.
Okay.
Typically, through all of these various different exams, and it looks like there's probably 3 or 4 dozen, there is a slight change year to year, with some exceptions like chemistry, where there was a vast change and it's ping-ponging back and forth. The students going to a specific school could not explain that. These are sufficiently large population samples that saying, well, it depends what school they went to. That explains an individual. That doesn't explain a population. Something is going on with the exam. There's no other scientifically valid explanation as to why year by year, samples of over 40 people have that much of a variance as to why they're passing or not passing. So I'm asking, what is going on with the exams in some subjects? I'm making sure that we're not ginning the numbers so that we see improvement in some areas, and then we realize that the standards aren't sufficiently rigorous, because teachers do need to know how to teach and know the subject academically. And Spanish, as you explained, is the perfect example. Being able to be a native speaker doesn't mean that you can teach it. And I am genuinely curious, and this is not the only anomaly, this is the one that stuck out, how chemistry shot up from 65% pass rate to 82% pass rate, and then over time dropped down to 61% pass rate, but then ginned up to 83% pass rate again. That stands out like someone is doing something with the test itself. Not that year by year, all of our universities are suddenly that much better at teaching chemistry education.
That's a great clarification, so thank you for that, Representative. One of the things we did implement was more study preparation programs for these candidates. So we have a partnership with another nonprofit, study.com. So implementing these free resources for the study materials could definitely have an impact on that. I would love to be able to work with the KDE, who's also in the room today. We were hoping to have a joint presentation with them. Love to be able to do a deep dive on the data for these particular areas of interest to see, were those candidates who tested for those two test areas in those years also using the test preparation, because that could very much be the caveat there. So thank you for that follow-up.
Thank you. That could be a valid explanation. Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Senator Tishner.
Thank you. Thank you for this data. It's really interesting. Kind of to follow up, do you have a breakdown of institutions and test scores?
So that is actually KDE's data, and we do provide that to them. And I know we've had conversations before. I believe another representative in the room might even have a paper chart. So we do have that data available. We were not prepared to talk about that today, but certainly that's something that if you requested from KDE, again, I want to clarify, it is their data. We only develop and administer the tests. The data belongs to the state for which those assessments are taken. So happy to work with the KDE representatives and provide you whatever you would like.
Representative Tipton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They say great minds work alike. Senator Tishner just stole my thunder with that question, but I do have a few comments. I think one of the reasons, if we weren't in a situation where we're having a teacher shortage, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation. But I think we know that school districts are scrambling in a lot of cases to find teachers to fill the classroom. So as policymakers, we've got a decision to make. How do we balance this? How do we make sure that we have quality teachers in the classroom that know the content, but also have teachers in the classroom? And that's kind of a tricky balance. So let's study the data and let's make an informed decision on this. And I want to point out one other thing on this data. This says best attempt. This is not a first-time pass rate. The data is not first-time pass rate. In some cases, there may be multiple attempts on there. So, I think that's an important point to remember. They didn't have Praxis when I did mine years ago, so it's probably a good thing. But I think we just need to keep that in mind, and let's talk to the professionals. Let's talk to the teachers in the classroom. Let's talk to EPSB. Let's get our information together. Let's make an informed decision on this, because these decisions could have a long-term impact on the quality of education in Kentucky. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This will be the last question. We've got a couple more that have them. If you'll get those to us, we'll get the answers for you. Representative Grossell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your presentation today. I'm a certified educator and went through the Praxis, even though I did not study education, passed it on my first try. Happy to report that. But I will say this about my experience. Taking the Praxis was a hurdle because I was already assigned in the classroom, and having to take it meant that I had to prepare, and it took time away from my focus on my students, my focus on the content I was supposed to be teaching, discipline issues, as my colleague, Representative Jackson, so eloquently highlighted earlier. My single best prep for being a teacher was the Kentucky Teacher Internship Program, for a few reasons that Praxis doesn't offer. I could ask questions to my mentor and get immediate feedback. And my mentor came into my classroom and observed my teaching and was able to help me strengthen myself. And so, I'm going to be frank. What does this cost the teacher? Because they pay out of pocket to take this. And so it's not only a hurdle of time, but it's a financial burden on these teachers. And the other question, which I can look up or ask staff, but I want to ask you here for the record, is what is our state paying ETS for this work you're doing across our state annually? Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Representative. So to answer the second part of that first, the state pays us nothing. We are a nonprofit organization, so the only expense that would come from the Praxis assessment is from the candidate individually. Most of those tests range around $125 to $160 per test. So depending on the number of tests that a candidate, if you're going to be certified in multiple areas, obviously you're going to have multiple tests to take. The second part of that is we're announcing for this fall that after you attempt to test 3 times, you will test for free. So if you have taken the test and not successfully passed it within the first 3, the 4th time and on, you will not be charged for that. So I wanted to highlight that as well. And then what was the first part of the question, Lisa? To address that piece?
I thought that was the...
Okay, sorry. Did we miss any other piece of that?
I think you're good. I just see no reason for teachers to continue to attempt to take this test when you just said earlier that it has no impact on the quality of the teacher. So I am not a fan of Praxis, and I hope that we can find a way to focus on other teacher quality prep programs that are impactful. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is KDE performance review data with our auditor's office, and I see them. If you all will come to the table, introduce yourself for the record, and you all may proceed. And we're at 45 minutes is what we have left. If you all could do like a great overview, and because I know there's going to be several questions.
We can do that, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much
Thank
for this
you.
opportunity. My name is Allison Ball. I am the Kentucky State Auditor. To my exact right, I have my General Counsel, Alex Magura. My left, I have my Chief of Staff, Lauren Ferguson. Both of them were very involved in the compilation of this report. We're very excited to present this to you. As you know, it came out let's see, a little over a month ago now, and it was the product of immense work. And just by way of background, I will give you just a little bit of background, and then we're going to get into the meat of this issue because I know we want to use our time well. This happened because of House Bill 825. It required the auditor's office to conduct a full fiscal controls and operational performance of the KDE and to provide a report to the Interim Joint Committee, which is what we're doing today. The examination reviewed several areas through a time period of July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2024. So about a 4-year span of time. Really quickly, what the report or the examination looked at were department operations, fiscal overview, department strategy and partnerships, state board oversight of the Commissioner of Education, academic standards and model curriculum framework, monitoring and consolidated, monitoring student support, Kentucky School for the Blind, Kentucky School for the Deaf, preschool, career and technical education, area technology centers, staffing and support of the Education Professional Standards Board, interscholastic athletics, and community education programs and services. So it was very, very broad. It needed to be broad because the KDE is big. It does a lot. It's just very vast, and as far as anyone in the auditor's office can remember, this is the first time a comprehensive audit like this has ever been done on the KDE. I think this was a wonderful time to do this, maybe even the perfect time, because right now they're crafting a strategic plan, and this will help them, I think, quite a bit to be able to accomplish that in the most effective way. As you'll recall, Commissioner Fletcher, who's back behind me actually right now, Commissioner Fletcher is relatively new still. He's been there approximately a year, and I think this is a wonderful time for him to have a blueprint of things to work on. I know for me in my jobs and my roles, it's usually taken me about a year just to figure out the structure of the office and who works for you and what to do. So this is the time, I think, to really get rolling on what to do. So in my mind, this is the perfect opportunity to provide information for him so he can craft the right thing to do. Just by way of background, too, KDE has had 8 commissioners in 10 years. That's a massive turnover. I think that actually accounts for some of the things that I'm going to discuss with you today. Back when I was state treasurer, I remember looking at our investment bodies, and one of the things we saw with KRS is that it had massive turnover over a period of time. So you had different strategies always being implemented, and that really does have a dramatic effect on an institution. Commissioner Fletcher is a mountain boy. I'm a mountain girl, so I hope he stays for a long time and does a really good job where he's at. And I'm going to go through really quickly now what all we looked at, our quick review of findings, so you have time to ask me questions. We conducted interviews, focus groups, surveys, school site visits, benchmark comparisons against peer states. Those were Alabama, Florida, Mississippi, Ohio, and Tennessee. They were chosen based on geography, student demographics, and achievement measures, so they're good ones for us to compare with. We also reviewed laws and regulations that impact the KDE. We did a data and document review. We worked with KDE leadership, KBE leadership, district superintendents and staff. So we did everything we could think of to provide good data and good information for them, for you, for Kentucky, to figure out what is the best way to address our students and make sure we're successful in every area. One thing that came out before our audit actually got really going. So this was very, very early days. I think it came out as we were beginning to work on the audit, were the proficiency scores in Kentucky according to NAEP. And Representative Truitt, you asked some questions on that, so I just want to give you an overview of that real quick. And that did inform us as we walked through what we wanted to look at in the audit. So you asked about what are the Kentucky scores and what are the NAEP scores, and I have those for you. So real quick, I'm going to give you the NAEP scores, and I can also go through the Kentucky scores. The elementary NAEP scores, the proficiency scores, are 47% in reading, 42% in math, 34% in science. By the time you get to high school, that's 45% in reading, 35% in math, and 6% in science. If you do a comparison, so KSA in fourth grade reading is 31%. In fourth grade reading under NAEP is 23%. KSA, Kentucky fourth grade mathematics, 31%. NAEP, 32%. KSA in 8th grade reading is 24%, NAEP is 25%, KSA is 26%, NAEP is 18%. For the most part, Kentucky is either a little bit higher or right about at the same of the NAEP. So I think your question was, is Kentucky more rigorous in its testing than national? And these numbers don't seem to indicate that to me. Just thought that might be helpful for you as we go into this. It informed us as we were beginning to figure out what to look at in our audit. All right, it's a lot of background. Let me dig into this. So what we felt like was an overriding issue that I think is going to be really helpful for them as they're developing their strategic plan is, and this is early days for them as they're developing their strategic plan, we found that they lacked measurable benchmarks. And this is really, really, really important if you're going to increase proficiency scores, if you're going to tailor academic assessments for students, you need to have measurables. It's very common to see language like improve or increase, and those are great words, but you need to have some measurable benchmarks in order to be able to figure out, okay, are you meeting the goals that you need to meet? So that was that's an overriding issue. It comes up several times in the audit. That is a big picture issue. Measurable benchmarks, metrics I'm not sure that's the plural of metrics. So measurable benchmarks that you can look at to determine, are we meeting the goals that we need to make sure we are improving? It's not just increasing, but we are improving. We saw something similar with the KBE, the Kentucky Board of Education, which is the body that oversees the KDE. And they actually were less specific in their benchmarks. So the KDE is right now crafting what's called United We Learn, and that's their strategic plan for 2024-2025. The KBE has one as well, not for the same period of time. It's really just for a year. And theirs are very broad goals, specifically fostering vibrant student learning experiences, advancing educational innovation and excellence, and cultivating collaborative partnerships. Those are great phrases. I'm all for them. But if you want to really make sure that you are doing the best you can, the most efficient way, it is best practice to have measurable, trackable goals that you can look at and you know you're doing what you need to do. It's not just amorphous and nebulous. Along those same lines, we also found that there's not good communication among education leaders in Kentucky. So it would be our recommendation that the KDE, the KBE works more with people who are doing this throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky. The Governor's Education and Labor Cabinet has some overlap with this. Actually, the KDE is administratively attached to the Education and Labor Cabinet. Also, there's the cooperatives. There could be better communication with the cooperatives. And this was a big one. There are quite a few advisory councils and committees and boards. Some of them are very significant, like the KBE, and some of them are much smaller in their areas of influence. But we found, for the most part, the KBE, about 60 to 80% of the KBE is listening to presentations, very similar to a professional learning group where you're being informed about what's happening. And it would be the recommendation that it needs to be, some of that is good, but you need to have more of an oversight, more of a true advisory capacity. These people have been put on these boards. They're on these advisory councils for a reason. It's okay to inform them. They need to have information, but then they need to then be able to turn around and use their areas of expertise to say, okay, this is where we need to improve. These are parts of our measurable, trackable goals. This will help a lot, I think, in the strategic vision, the strategic plan, if there's more intentionality on that part. One glaring example, and I think this is one that is significant for Kentucky because we need to do, I think, more when it comes to children with disabilities, but SAPEC, the State Advisory panel on exceptional children, we found that they haven't had a quorum in a year. They have 12 vacancies currently, and many of the members who are on there, it's unclear whether or not their current terms are still ongoing or if they're just still there because no one else has been reappointed. So that's an area that is really important. We need to have good involvement from parents, from teachers, from stakeholders when it comes to children with disabilities. And I think that's one that really needs to be used much more effectively to make sure our strategic plans are correct and we're efficient and we're making a difference for these children that are our responsibility. Somewhat similar to all of that, we also found that, and this is very common among state government, that if you don't do consistent, comprehensive reviews like we did here, they tend to grow. And that's happened here as well. So we found that there are 13 dedicated policy staff members, which is more than what we have in the comparison states. So that's something I think that needs to be reviewed. Is this the most efficient way of doing things? Those staff members typically are not involved in the legislative process in the same way that other states are. So there's a question of, do we need this many people? What exactly is the best way to do this in the most efficient way? So we have 13 dedicated staff members for policy work, and that's by comparison. Alabama has 2, Florida has 1, Mississippi has 1, Tennessee has 4. So we're definitely an outlier among that comparison group. And I think that's relevant for us as we begin to discuss this. The actual work that's being performed, I think a good strategic plan will have an impact in this as well. We found that 43% of school districts have not had a completed comprehensive on-site monitoring performed within the last 10 years. So just over 50, about 57% have had that within the last 10 years, but 43% have not in a 10-year period of time. And as part of that, we also discovered that about 12% have had it done 2 or more times. So there's a very small group that's had it done quite a bit, a significant group that's not had it done in 10 years. And I think this strategic measurable benchmark, I think that actually will resolve some of those issues if we can make sure there's clarity, and then, long consistency of a commissioner can also address those kinds of issues. So that's something that needs to be addressed. We also found from interviews with school districts is that they don't have a lot of clarity about what causes you to get monitored. There needs to be more transparency and clarity about what things that you do causes the KDE to come in and come on site and do a review of you. Is it just that it happens like clockwork periodically, or are you doing some things that require some more monitoring? And then also the outcomes of that would be helpful for other school districts. Those are some things that we reviewed as we were going through that. The model curriculum framework, which is a big role of the KDE, it's right now a 300-page document, and we were informed that it's difficult for teachers to be able to go through that to figure out, okay, what curriculum is consistent with this framework. It's just unwieldy at this point. And a population that also needs to be included as you're developing strategic plans is the English learners populations. It's right now at 8%, which is still a significant amount in Kentucky, particularly in certain areas. Warren County, we were just talking about a moment ago, Jefferson County, some of those areas really do have a very large percentage of English learners. And we don't have a dedicated staff member to English learners, and it's not as incorporated into the strategic plan at this point. So that's an area that I think needs to be addressed. When it comes with children with disabilities, there's more work that can be done on the strategic plan, on ILPs and IEPs. So that's a broad framework. I'm going to go into some more specific things now that I've done that, but those are overarching issues, really important right now as they're developing strategic plans to have an awareness of that so they can do what needs to be done to address those issues. Obviously, an auditor's office always looks at the finances, and that's one thing that we did. One issue that's gotten some attention, and I'm just going to address it real quick, is the SEEK funding issue. Over the period of about 4 years, KDE had about $250 million of SEEK fund that they had allowed to lapse, and our auditor's review of the budget bill that governed last session and the previous sessions, particularly last session, indicated that, or showed, the budget bill language showed that money actually could be used for some other SEEK permissible buckets, so to speak. So they had a shortfall of public transportation and vocational transportation, about $40 million, so a significant amount of money. That $250 million from the last 4 years, some of that could have been plugged in some of those areas. so that's a very, very technical aspect when it comes to seek funding, but it's worth mentioning because that's an area of expertise for us. It's something that we deal with all the time. Some other areas that do involve finances and budgeting. I know you all are about to begin a budget year, so this is a great time for you to think about these issues. And actually, it's perfect today. We did determine that as you're developing your budgets, areas where you need to probably think about addressing are math, and literacy coaches. When we did comparisons with other states, there's opportunities there with the right kind of investments to move the needle and improve those areas. So there's a lot of data. This is over a 500-page document. As you're preparing your budgets, those areas that address those specific, the literacy coaches, the math, we've got a lot in there to help inform you on the amount of money that perhaps you want to put into those areas. Representative Jackson, I know your question was related to discipline and violence that occurs in the schools. We actually have something that addresses that somewhat in our audit, and this is an area I think that is critically important right now. There's much that's being said about an increase in anxiety, increase in suicide, depression among just about all ages of school children. So it's not limited to high school. It's not limited to middle school. It goes down to the elementary level. There's much that's being written about that right now. And Kentucky has an opportunity to improve what we're doing to address that issue specifically when it comes to school counselors. So as you're crafting your budget and you're thinking what can be done on that issue, we discovered that nearly half of all school districts don't meet the recommended counselor to student ratio of 1 to 250 students. Now that actually sounds like quite a lot to me, even as it is, but that's our goal right now, is 1 to every 250 students. So 1 counselor per 250. Right now we're about 1 to 300. So we're not even meeting that goal in most of the schools. If you want a real number, we calculated that about 628 more counselors are needed in the Commonwealth of Kentucky to address this issue. And I know there are a variety of reasons for why this is difficult to fill those positions, but I think this is one that is important right now, given mental health issues, given school violence, given the rise of anxiety, the rise of suicide, the rise of depression. This is something that I think we need to tackle as a Commonwealth. And as we're doing that, I think it's helpful to remember that school counselors right now are not meeting the recommended 60% of their time spent on counseling. So, considerable amount of the time isn't even going to what we need them there to do. So we need to figure out what kind of reforms are necessary, I think, to address this issue. This is a big one in our current climate right now. So I don't want to gloss over that. I want to make sure I'm hitting that point good and hard so that you all can make the necessary decisions that you need to do. One just side note when it comes to literacy coaches, this is an interesting comparison with other states, and I'm just going to give this to you so you have this information as you're developing what you need to. But we're doing something called, or we allow something called the 3Qing method for teaching reading. And 14 states have actually banned that, including several of the states that we looked at. There's controversy involving that system. There's some evidence that it hinders reading comprehension rather than improves it. So I'm just going to mention that to you, as that's something that came up because it's been an issue nationally, and it came up with our comparison states, and that's something that I think that you all need to have in your mind as you're considering what to do. All right, these areas I want to address, they don't fit neatly in a bucket, but I want to just spend some time talking to them. This one is on preschools, and this is a state conversation right now. What do we do about preschools in the Commonwealth of Kentucky? How do we make sure that they are good and that they are helping children prepare for kindergarten? I've got a little one that's about to go to preschool this year, so this is something I think about. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the STARS system in Kentucky. That's the assessment program that we use right now to determine if a preschool is doing a good job on their programs. Right now we have what's called the All-Stars rating system. It's a 5-point rating system. Some of you may be fully well versed in this, and forgive me if I'm telling you things that you already know, but it's helpful just to have a whole picture. Based on 2023 data, we found that 2.7 is the average all-star rating for Kentucky's preschools that are getting state dollars. So 2.7 is the average. That, if you are under 3, so you're 2.7, that is considered to be not high quality. So about 50.2% are getting either a 3, 4, or 5, and 3, 4, or 5 is considered to be high quality. So the average is not achieving the high quality. The average is not high quality. And significant for you to also be aware of, and this came as a surprise to me, as we were evaluating the data, it became apparent that there was not a correlation that showed high rating with kindergarten readiness. So as we're figuring out where we're going on preschool and kindergarten readiness, this needs to be part of the discussion. We even looked at the top 10 highest quality rated preschool programs in Kentucky and found there was little correlation between that quality rating and students being prepared for kindergarten. So we need to do some work figuring out what that means and what do we do going from here with that information. That's a relevant issue about the quality of work that we're doing. There's more on that. There's different areas that you look at when it comes to kindergarten readiness. I will say we were doing better on the social aspects of kindergarten readiness, which is actually a big part of getting ready for kindergarten. But the curriculum part of it, the academic part of it, was less than I would like to see. And if you do the comparison with the other states, our benchmarks were considerably lower. Actually, Alex, do you have that page? Because it might be worth just walking through for just a moment. Thank you very much. Kentucky's benchmarks were considerably lower than the other states. So our targets, just walking through it for just a minute, our social emotional target in Kentucky is 38%, in Alabama it's 93%, in Florida it's 76%, in Mississippi it's 62%. That's the closest one to us. 83% in Ohio, 92% in Tennessee. Knowledge and skills, our target is 59%, Alabama is 92, Florida is 61, Mississippi is 69, Ohio is 82, Tennessee is 90. And the behaviors to meet needs, because there's a lot of behavioral work that's done with these little ones. Kentucky has a 44% benchmark, and Alabama has 92, Florida has 65, Mississippi, the closest one here to us, is 47, Ohio is 84, and Tennessee is 93%. So there's a lot of information when it comes to kindergarten readiness and preschool, and I know that this is an issue, and it's going to come up this session. I want to make sure you all are aware that that information is in there as you're beginning to determine what you need to do. Very good. Another issue that doesn't fit into a category very neatly, but it's one we need to discuss, is the KHSAA. Many years ago, the KHSAA was made the agent to deal with school sports in Kentucky. And we are a big sport state in Kentucky. I think everybody has memories associated with their time in high school and middle school having to do with the KHSAA. There were two issues regarding them that this body needs to be aware of. One thing we found is that the KHSAA does not currently maintain a tracking system for Title IX complaints. That's a big issue because, and I know there's much has been done to address this, but it's still a national issue, is girls and boys competing against each other, or boys playing in girls' sports. There are a variety of issues that can come up in Title IX complaints, many of them, but that's one of them that comes up with Title IX complaints. So it's relevant in a different way right now than it's been in years past, and so we need to have a tracking system for Title IX complaints. We need to be able to tell, are there some school districts that are worse than other ones? Are there some coaches that are treating kids differently in certain areas? We need to be able to track that and make sure those issues are being resolved the way they should be. And this one is a more worrying and concerning finding that we had. We found that there's no voluntary or legislative required database or central clearinghouse to track all middle or high school coaches who are being investigated or charged with inappropriate behavior towards a minor. A lot of coverage in the media recently. I know there's the coaches in Louisville who are the football coaches who have had a history of abuse of minors, sexual abuse of minors. It seems like the more we dig into this, the more we find that this is more ongoing than we realized. So I think we need to make sure that our children, and they're often in vulnerable positions if they're with a coach, they might be traveling together. There's locker rooms. There are all kinds of areas for intimacy that could be problematic when you're dealing with this area. So I think this is something that I was pleased to uncover because I did not have an awareness of that, and I think it's something that we need to address right away before this becomes more of a serious issue. It already is a serious issue. We also found that the KDE could do more when it comes to sexual assault prevention and raising awareness in schools. One thing that sometimes occurs when you're doing an audit is, we have these discussions with our auditees, and then sometimes they'll implement things as we go, and that's great. It's what you want. They don't always wait for an audit to be completed, and this is an instance of that. They did include during our audit a document on preventing and responding to sexual and dating violence, and that's exactly the kind of thing we want to see. This really is a give and take where, we're giving information and then they can run with it and address these issues. And they're beginning to do that in this area. And that's excellent. Exactly what we want to see as a state. Another area that doesn't fit neatly into a bucket, but is worth your consideration, is the area of discussion on CTEs and ATCs, the career technical, the technical schools, the career technical schools, things like the FFA, FBLA. We did have some information specifically about the CTEs when it comes to FFA, FBLA, those organizations. I can leave some of that to you to review, but some of it has to do with FFA camp. There needs to be some clarity about that. That's actually a state-owned property, and that allows for more funding to be able to go to that property. Some areas that deal with kids that are involved in FFA, FBLA, those kinds of organizations being able to use dues to compete nationally. That may require a legislative fix, but that's something that's part of our recommendation. So I'll leave that to you all to be able to review all that. But when it comes to ATCs, there's some very specific information that I think you'll want to spend some time looking at before this session begins. And that there needs to be some reform when it comes to their procurement process. And right now, the category of employees they are. So they don't have the flexibility that the schools have to be able to pay to teach in this area, even though they are teachers. They're governed by as if they're more like state employees, and that prevents them from being able to have more flexibility to teach or to pay to teach for the levels of expertise. And then when it comes to procurement, right now that's an issue. They have to use our model contract that we have to use as a state, and so that prevents them from having relationships with local businesses that could be places of possible employment for these kids as they're learning to weld. If you could be buying some of your materials locally, then that just creates a natural relationship for those kids to be able to get jobs. So there's actually quite a bit of areas for possible reform when it comes to ATCs. I think that it's low-hanging fruit. It make a big difference for career readiness. It's going to help a lot of these kids be able to be ready to be in the workforce as soon as they've graduated. So there's much that being done in that area that I'm excited about. Another area that I don't want to overlook is the School for the Blind and the School for the Deaf. Those are unique school structures. They've been around since the 1800s. They're very, very, very old schools, and they meet populations that have very specific needs. They've done good work for a lot of time, but right now they are attached in a way to the KDE that doesn't make a lot of sense. I think the KDE would be best used to focus on what their areas of expertise are, and they can focus on those, and then let the people who are more closely connected to the School for the Blind, School for the Deaf, be the ones more responsible for them. So right now the commissioner is actually acting as a superintendent in a lot of ways for both of these schools, one specifically. I think there are reforms that could happen legislatively that would unleash potential for those schools and would allow the KDE to focus on what their areas of expertise are in a positive way. So that's a lot. There's much more, and we can go into much more. And I know that I said that's a quick overview. I don't even know what time it is now, but I'm sure we did a lot in a relatively short period of time.
I know we have some questions, and we'll get started. Senator West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the report. As you stated there, this is a lot to handle. We could literally sit here for 6 to 8 hours and kind of sift through all this stuff, 500-page document or whatever it is. I've got 2 questions. They're really short. I'll try to be very brief. I know we're short on time. The first question is, as part of this audit, part of 825 was fiscal controls. Mm-hmm. We really wanted to look at that. And we had an outside entity that was hired, PCG, to assist with this. And first question, why are they here today? And if not, why are they not here to present?
Sure. So PCG, we hired them to be consultants to us. And this is a little bit of a different structure from the way, I think Auditor Harmon, typically when he would hire a consultant, he would leave the work to them and they would do it. And there's a variety of reasons for why different offices do different things. So we've taken a different approach to that. So we actually use them as a consultant, but this is our audit. Our State Department worked on it. Our special exam worked on it. We are the final say on it. So we use them as an advisor, as a consultant. They conducted a lot of the interviews. They did a lot of the groundwork for it when it was an area that they had an expertise. But this is our audit, and we use them as an advisor.
Thank you. So that directly goes into my second question. So as part of 825, one of the primary things we ask for is what fiscal controls are in place. And much of the audit deals with internal KDE operations that are not related to fiscal management. As I went through it, I saw under the fiscal item, the fiscal heading, we had the item dealing with the SEEK funding lapse. It went back to the general fund. It should have been kept in-house. There's that component that was on there. And then through the rest of the report, on page 101, there's some items, and staff helped me with this, but there's some items dealing with federal funds, a review. There were 3 federal funds items. And other than the SEEK lapse and the items on 101, that's really the only information I saw on, fiscal controls or fiscal management. And I expected the audit to go a little bit more into the weeds on specific transactions and transfers.
Senator, if I may, you'll be pleased to know there is more. That's not the only area on fiscal that we did.
So let me finish it real quick. So KDE is a multi-billion-dollar pass-through, right? And so I was thinking maybe there would be more of a little bit of a granular analysis. Maybe you're getting ready to say maybe I'm missing something.
So I'll direct you to look at observations. These are not findings. These are observations. 110, 111, 112, 113, actually, that whole area deals with finances. So you'll actually find some in the other ones as well. But so what we looked at a lot were processes. So are we making sure that we're catching things? Are we funneling correct? And I think that's behind what you're asking. So part of what you're asking is, did we find more problems than what I've identified? We did in relation to processes, not in relation to expenditures going out the door that shouldn't have. But we did find some on processes. So I can run through real quick with you a few of them if you want to hear some of them, and then if you want to review also.
Before you, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
If you could specifically, what you just stated though was you did find some process problems, but as far as specific items, like this was supposed to be a 4% holdback on administration, whatever. Basically what you're telling us is you didn't find any major glaring discrepancies in the fiscal policy or the money specifically.
We didn't find glaring problems. There was one area in particular that had to do with grants that schools had to fill out some paperwork years and years and years ago having to do with a grant, and it had not been updated for a long period of time. So we don't know for certain if they still qualify for those kinds of grants. So there were some issues like that. We did not find big ticket glaring problems other than the SEEK funding. We did find areas where there were problems with budgeting. We did find, I don't mean budgeting as in money going the wrong place. I mean the way they track their budgets, the software they use, the programs they use. We did find, and we've got some coverage on that, which I can run through if you want, or if you want to review it yourself, that's fine too. But we did find the processes, the software, the communications. There were issues on that, and all of those create risks. So we usually identify those in an audit because, you're opening up the door for information not being compiled correctly. Sometimes you don't have the appropriate checks and balances. And we did find some of those. And that's very typical when we do a fiscal audit. Those are the kinds of things that we review. But we didn't find a significant amount of money going out the door that shouldn't have.
That's a great answer. I don't want to eat anybody else's time, so thank you.
Representative Rourke.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, I wanted to just say, Auditor Ball, thank you for this report. I think it definitely has elevated a lot of really important needs, and you've highlighted several of those, from the sexual assault prevention and awareness to our multilingual parents needing access to the special education dispute resolution forms and things, as well as mental health. So I just appreciate you also your comment saying that we need to do more when it comes to children with disabilities. And actually, Representative Scott Sharp and I have been using the Engage and Empower Disability Caucus to kind of dive more into the resources for IEPs. And I was hoping that you could speak more to what you found on this subject, and I'd also be happy to meet with you again separately to talk about what we could be doing to really help make sure that teachers are getting those resources.
Yeah, well, this is an area I think that needs very intentional, well-crafted work. And Representative Bojanowski actually met with me before I even came in here too, and gave me some good documentation, which I haven't gotten to review yet. I'm a fast reader, but not that fast. And the point that she was making was that some of those children that are fall into those categories can't be assessed as the same way as other children. And so there's a lot of work, and that comes into play when you're doing an ILP and IEP. So a lot of the work that we did compared them based on NAEP scores. We've got a lot of documentation on that, and this was probably the most technical part of our whole audit when it comes to children with disabilities. So there's a lot of information on it, and it would take us a while to really go through it, which if you have follow-up questions, it may be the best way to do it that way. But the big things that I was concerned about came in regards to IEPs somewhat, but ILPs in particular, because you want to help these children be able to be as independent as possible, as career ready as possible. And there was a lot of work yet to be done on that. And I'll be eager to see, we felt like that the strategic plan didn't include enough to address those areas. And I'll be eager to see, and this audit is out there, what comes of that as they're beginning to craft what they do in response of all the information and the data that we compiled for them. We found like the ATCs, for example, were an area that children with disabilities are not a part of the strategy for those schools. And there's a lot that could be done for them in those areas. So like an ILP would work very well with you could perhaps be a good fit for a culinary school, something trying to help them as they're getting ready to graduate. So it seemed like there were deficiencies in that area to prepare them for what they personally are capable of doing.
Thank you, and I'll be happy to connect with you offline to talk more about that.
Yes, that was a very technical portion of it that you'll probably want to spend a little bit of time working on.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Auditor Ball, this is a tough question for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You indicated that you're getting ready to send your children to preschool. And I remember many years ago, for me, I sent all three of my children through preschool, paid for it privately. And it was really beneficial to them as they, traverse through the K through 12 system and into college and graduate from college. I found preschool very helpful in school readiness. As you know, our governor has been pushing for that this year. He's made it a cornerstone, of what he would like to see happen in 2026. Currently, 4 of the 7 states that are contiguous to Kentucky, Virginia, West Virginia, Ohio, and Illinois, have universal pre-K. And Indiana, as we speak today, has it on the table for consideration. Okay. As we stand in this country today, the majority of the 50 states have some form of universal pre-K. They are racing past Kentucky. You did an excellent report. Your comprehensive report indicated that our state average for preschool now is 2.7, which is, as you indicated, below average. I think your exact words were, we need to do some work in this area. Mm-hmm. Doesn't your report make the case that Kentucky needs to follow the rest of the country now and adopt some form of universal pre-K? Is the governor absolutely correct in pushing for that? And if you disagree with that, then explain why not.
Sure, it's a good question, Senator Thomas. I would say, so looking at these numbers from our assessment, if we're not doing a good job on that at this point, then we don't want to expand that out to other kids. So step 1 would be make sure our preschools are performing to the highest level they can be. So before we have that conversation, this would be my takeaway from it. Let's fix that, because I think what we need to do is fix that. Now, you're the legislative body. I'm an executive. I carry out whatever you tell me to carry out as an executive. Those are conversations I know that you all will have internally. But my role is to provide you data and information. And what I was concerned about when I reviewed this is our quality is not where it should be. And I think that needs to be addressed, number 1.
Representative Banton.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Did you notice anything in your audit about school districts hiring construction or architects? And can you just speak to that for a few minutes?
So let me see if I can make sure I understand your question. Do you mean hiring architects to teach like the ATC schools or okay?
No, I'm talking about schools hiring for building and construction.
Ah. I don't know
Was
that
there
we.
anything-
I don't know that
okay.
we reviewed that level. So it was a KDE audit, which sometimes wrapped up some facilities issues, and we did have a finding on the formula that's used for paying for the facilities. So we had a recommendation on that, but it didn't dig into, are you using an architect? Are you like who is creating the plan for the building?
Okay.
It didn't go as deep as that.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
Alex, do you have anything further on that one? I think the only thing I can think of is that we talked about the facilities formula, and we recommended a reform of the formula.
Perfect. Thank you.
In Chapter 1, Representative, there's observation 1.16, finding 1.17, observation 1.18, and then finding 1.19. All of that deals with sort of improvements that can be made in the facilities funding situation that school districts are going through right now.
Representative Callaway.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for this exhaustive presentation. I do want to reiterate, I appreciate you drawing attention to CTE and the ATC and the fact that they are not included in the strategic plan. That is really disconcerting to me. And so I really want to reiterate the importance of those programs and how we need to come alongside the students who will be attending KCTCS, who will be entering workforce right out of high school. I would like to see more attention given to the teachers, as you mentioned, their salary, their makeup, all of that. And I've heard that from my local ATC, that is a concern. Also, the procuring of materials. It was red tape after red tape after red tape just to make simple purchases. Mm-hmm. Those have all been brought to my attention. This is really, really relevant, and we need to not just glaze over it. I really want to reiterate all that you've said there. And if you had one recommendation just for those two specific programs for legislature, I'm thinking funding. Number one is funding for me. Is there something else that we should be focused on to support these?
So some of it is truly legislative when it comes to ATCs. So there does need to be, I think, a legislative change that would allow them to be able to go through a different procurement process. Because right now they have to use the state procurement process. So that's why they have to use the master agreement for supplies. And that's the part where if that was lifted, they could start building relationships with local suppliers. They probably could get it cheaper, and they definitely could begin to get. I mean, we want them to get it cheaper, right? So we want it to be the cheapest possible. So that could open the door for them to be able to get some cheaper supplies. But then also the plus side of that, the added benefit would be these kids are going to start to have relationships with their local suppliers who actually employ people in the community. So you're right, there's a budget aspect to this. There's usually a budget aspect. But some of this also is as simple as just changing the legislation that governs this. And that would be the part that requires them to be treated as state employees, and then the part that requires them to use the state procurement, which also requires them to use the state banking, the state accounting. All of that falls under what the state has to do. So they could be broken free of some of that and treated really more like a traditional school. That would open more doors for them. So that is a great question. I didn't mention this, but since you brought that back up again, we found that a lot of the buildings that the ATC schools use are very old, like 50 years or more, very, very old. And they're just making do with what they have. But it seemed like there's less clarity when it comes to SEEK money being available to them when it's passing through. So we had some recommendations about clarity about if they can use the SEEK funds. Sometimes they can, but they don't. There's some work that could be done in that area.
Thank you all for your presentation. I'm going to cut it right there. I said we'd be out by 1, and we're going to do that. So thank you all. It was a lot to digest, and we probably will have some more questions and be in contact with you then.
Very good.
Thank you to committee members for keeping this going and allowing us to make our time. Need a motion to adjourn. Adjourned.